Morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to yet another symposium at the Association of African Startups. You are welcome. Welcome, 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 welcome. My name is Abiola Odesonya, and I'm going to be your moderator today. So before we begin, we want to say a very, very big thank you to our sponsors and our partners for making this happen. The Association of African Startups is an organization that has for the last 5 years been providing the requisite knowledge or the requisite resources every African entrepreneur needs to grow profitable and sustainable businesses. And we have numerous programs in which we do that. And one of it is the TAS Symposium, Africa Economic Advancement, where we teach African entrepreneurs how to use governmental opportunities to scale their business, how to partner with the government to scale their business. And we've been doing this for the last 5 years, right? So thank you so much. And this year, our team is going to be the real-time challenge with Intracontinental Trade, talking about AfCFTA. But before we begin, like it's our culture at the Association of African Startups, we start everything with a word of prayer. So please join me for a short prayer. Our Father and our God, we thank you. Ancient of days, we worship you. I am that I am, give you glory. We ascribe all glory, all honor, all power to you now and forever in Jesus' name. Lord, we ask that you take control. We ask, Heavenly Father, that you take care of this event in the name of Jesus. We ask, Lord, that you speak through the speakers in the name of Jesus. We also ask, Lord, that everybody that partakes of this event will get something tangible and understand it, affect her better in Jesus' name. We are welcoming you here, Holy Ghost, in the name of Jesus. Thank you, Father, for everything you have done for us and will continue to do for us. In Jesus' mighty, precious name, we have prayed. Amen. Once again, before we begin, we want to thank our sponsors. That is the Borderless Trade Network. The Borderless Trade Network is a gender and trade advocacy network that collaborates with key players in the trade and investment space to boost and increase the participation of women in trade and investment. We are saying a very, very big thank you for sponsoring this event. Another sponsor that we have is the Affected Dialogues, a Pan-African initiative committed to advancing awareness, understanding, and the successful implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, that's AfCFTA. We are saying a very, very big thank you for sponsoring this event. Another sponsor we have is the Africa Trade Solutions Consulting, which is a premier consulting firm dedicated to transforming Africa's economic landscape through expertise in international trade, regional integration, and sustainable inclusion. We are saying a very, very big thank you for sponsoring it. And we have our partner, which is Innovation Solutions, a PR and marketing firm that helps businesses boost brand visibility, perception, and sales. We are saying thank you so much for being our partner all these years. And once again, this event was powered by the Association of African Startups. And we are saying a very, very big thank you. And we say welcome, welcome, welcome. And without further ado, we are going to be inviting our president and founder, Mrs. Just Omomo Ibe, for the opening remarks. Ma, please, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam COO. Thank you to all of our distinguished partners for making today a success. And some of the things that we must take note about these conversations is that we're setting the tone for how Africa will trade within herself and within the other nations of the world. And so these conversations are happening in rooms where we're exchanging ideas. And in exchanging ideas, we would have opportunities to share these ideas at different stakeholder conversation. But predominantly, one of the most important parts of this conversation is to enroll the interest and the desire of African entrepreneurs to truly participate in the AfCFTA and all the agreements surrounding it. And so I want to say a huge welcome once again to every single one, both our speakers and our attendees, some of which will be joining on YouTube, and just those of us who are in this Zoom meeting. We welcome you once again. This year, we have decided to focus on the theme, real life challenges with the AfCFTA. Most of you will agree with us that the moment Africa decided to create her own regional economic bloc, it set a widespread of hope within our hearts. Because for the first time, all of us as Africans, whether we are entrepreneurs, whether we are stakeholders, whether we are in the private sector or public sector, for the first time, truly began to see the tremendous opportunity that exists within the continent that allows us tap from ourselves the wealth that we truly carry. Just not beyond just the market size, but also in terms of the value of our human capital. And so every single one of us were excited about the possibilities of what could come out of this regional bloc. Now, even though majority of the ratification and all the agreements are done at governmental level, wherein governments are expected to agree amongst themselves so that the borders are acceptable to all of us as Africans. We know there's been a lot of bottlenecks at that level. But while we are, pressing forward at the regional level to try to pull down these barriers, I feel like one of the focus we should have here is to truly awaken the desires in the heart of African entrepreneurs to see the potential in the African market. Because if you look at our African continent, the majority of entrepreneurs are more interested in the dollar economy, in the British pound economy, in the euro economy, and maybe in the Kuwaiti economy. And most times, very few of them are knee-deep looking for how to leverage this $1.4 trillion economy. And of course, it's projected to skyrocket in the next couple of decades. What does this show us as African entrepreneurs? It means that to a very large extent, our eyes are truly blinded to a large extent at the potential that we carry in terms of trade, in terms of GDP addition, in terms of even the strength of our human capital, what we can tap from this regional market. And unfortunately, our entrepreneurs are neglecting this huge chunk and focusing on what is going on outside. While that is, of course, intricately important, but I find that the very things we're ignoring, the West is every day encroaching into our markets and showing us the potentials that we just cannot see. So the big question for us as African entrepreneurs is, what is going on in our markets that we cannot see? What are the potentials that the whole world sees but us? What is it about our shared wealth and our shared responsibility to truly harness the potentials that we have ignored as African entrepreneurs? This conversation is about that. It's about awakening your heart to the fact that Nigeria is a market with over 200 million plus people. And of course, is targeted to almost double in the next 2 decades. And then there are other fast-growing economies within the continent of Africa. What is it about our businesses that we just cannot see the value within these economies and strive amongst ourselves to do business within these economies? It is easier to scale in an African country than to scale in developed countries. Now, there's no doubt that you can always scale your business into foreign countries, starting with the digital platforms. There's no doubt. But let's begin to look at it this way, that if a Kenyan and a Ghanaian, or maybe a Russian or a Burkinabe person who sees what Nigeria has to offer and is interested in trading with Nigeria, can we not create those platforms amongst ourselves where we can truly do business and be profitable amongst ourselves as a people? So beyond the actual infrastructural bottlenecks that we pray and hope that our governments at the stakeholder level are doing what they know to do, and if they don't do what they know to do, other dispensation of leaders will arise and we do the work. And this is my approach towards leadership in Africa. As much as we hope and pray that we have the right leaders, Africa will never remain the same like this. The crop of leaders we have will never always be the crop of leaders. A time will come when people will arise and say, we have had it and we're going to truly take our nations by the jugular. You see, it's going to happen. While we're trusting for that time to happen in Africa, we at this level, where we cannot necessarily control the narrative at the stakeholder level, can we begin to intimate our hearts about the importance of the bloc and why we collectively must work together to make our block works. And I block, regional block. And that starts with how I see the other African who is an entrepreneur in Kenya, how I see my options. If I was to put a Kenyan business and an American business, who will I naturally choose first? The average African will choose the American business. Unfortunately, it's a hard wiring that has been so indoctrinated into us that if we don't fix that hard wiring, we'll continue to have real-time challenges with the AfCFTA, even when the infrastructural challenges have been dealt with. And that is why this conversation, for me, at the heart of this conversation is wake the average African entrepreneur to say everything that has blinded your eyes from seeing Africa as a regional bloc that can enrich you is the very indoctrination that is stopping you and I from actually making this bloc prosperous. Because if we don't change this mindset in the minds of our entrepreneurs, you know what will happen? We would fix all the infrastructural bottlenecks with the AfCFTA and its implementation. And then countries like China will enter into our bloc and dominate the bloc. Countries like America and Russia and all of them will enter into the bloc and dominate our bloc. So it will feel as though we created a regional bloc only for foreigners to come and take advantage the more of our market. Now, there's nothing wrong with inter-trade, that is continent to continent. There's nothing wrong with those sort of trade. But if a regional bloc was created for the very purpose of us trading amongst ourselves, yet the people we are creating the bloc for almost are very unconcerned, what do you think will happen? And so my heart cry to everybody who is joining this conversation today is Africa is a regional bloc that will succeed if all of us within our hearts truly begin to look at this market for what it is. We don't just have the numbers, we don't just have the wealth, we have the resources, both natural resources, mineral resources, human resources. All of this collectively can create us immeasurable wealth only if it is stewarded by astute and accountable leaders. From this level as entrepreneurs, we can begin to breed accountable leaders. We can begin to raise leaders who see Africa for what it is, a region of immeasurable wealth, and then begin to throw their creativity into Africa. Don't you realize that one of the very things we see going on in Africa today is the brain drain? How that we have skilled experts and technicians, skilled labor, leaving the country or leaving the continent and going to other places and are willing to work themselves out to add value to the other economies. You know why? Beyond the fact that our economies are struggling at the moment, beyond that is that we hardly don't believe in our nation, in our continent. We don't. And I know the average person will say, why should I believe? What have they done for me? All they have done is steal, be corrupt. And yes, you are right. That's what they have done for the longest time. But can I also draw your attention to this? No real-time change comes by people exiting, except if your purpose of exit is to gather experience, then come back and pour into your continent, except if that's your purpose of exit. But if your purpose of exit is to run away from the discomfort so that you can comfort your own self, which may not be a bad thing for a start, but if all of us begin to act that way, who will build Africa for us? Who will make the trade bloc work? Who will add value to this economic bloc? Who will transform it? If we leave it at the hands of the foreigners, the same thing they have been doing when we did not have a bloc, they will continue to do this even when we have a bloc. Except we as African entrepreneurs arise and take our place at the epicenter of the implementation of the AfCFTA. An African entrepreneur in Kenya, in Ghana, in Lesotho is the next person I should be looking at as an alternative before I begin to consider other foreign options. I hope you recognize that this is how the Chinese person is. The Chinese person is not looking to pick you over their brethren. There's nothing you want to do about it. It's a wiring in their heart. It's an indoctrination that happened so that their trade bloc could work. China was not always this. China locked themselves from the rest of the world for over 50 years because they realized they needed to first re-indoctrinate the minds of the people for them to see China as the biggest thing that ever happened since creation. And did it work? Oh boy, it worked. Now, the average Chinese person, there's nothing you want to say to them. You are not as important as their brother in China, even if they know that some of their products are very counterfeit. They know, but guess what? They will choose China over any country. Something has happened to their mind concerning their country, concerning their regional bloc. Something has happened. And so they just don't see you as a better alternative. A Chinese person will put his own product on the table, and you bring an American product that is obviously better, but he will still prefer his person. What do you think happened there? Do you think they're in denial? They're not. It's an indoctrination. My regional bloc is important to me than any other regional bloc because I know it's in the interest of my bloc and my continent for it to work. This, my dear friends, is what we must do to make sure our trade bloc works. The African leaders are doing what they know to do at that level. Most of them distracted by the burden of leadership in their various countries. And because we haven't seen how our collective working together brings us wealth, we haven't seen it as African leaders. Most of these African leaders are burdened with how to make their own country work. They haven't even had a full grasp of the leadership of their country. And so when you begin to bring conversations around regional integration, you are losing them. Unfortunately, that's where we are at leadership level. Everyone is burdened with the leadership of their country without recourse as to how regional integration can push us further as a people. Well, at that level, we commend their effort thus far. You, who is a young African leader, who is a young African entrepreneur, who is coming up, what will you do differently? What mindsets must you adopt today that will help you make better decisions, that will prosper also regionally as a trade bloc when we do actually break the barriers of all those bottlenecks? What decisions would you make differently? This is my heart cry. This is my outcry. And this is the awakening I want every African, whether you're a young leader, you're a business leader, you're an employee, or you're even just a student who is wondering, what am I going to do with these conversations? The burden of leadership, the burden of the transformation of this regional bloc, it rests on all of us because when it works, all of us as a region prosper. When all of us as a region prosper, we enjoy the best of our regional sovereignty as a people. Now more than ever, dear African entrepreneurs, you have a couple of things to begin to do from now. Number one, begin to cultivate the mindsets that make you see Africa as a market that is worthy of your full investment. That's the first thing to do. Begin to create those mindsets. Begin to create this mindset. This is the responsibility you have. Africa as a regional bloc is worthy of my investment. And when you begin to create this market and mindset, it will begin to trigger certain levels of decisions that you have to start making. It will help you start creating new marketing strategies that will help you dig deeper into the benefits or the wealth that is lying within our regional bloc. That's the first thing, cultivating the mindset. Number two is identifying those who are already doing a work within this body and see how you can add value to the work that you're doing. Sometimes it could just be a suggestion. I know there's somebody who is here, one of our partners and our speakers today who is working on whose company is AfCFTA dialogues. I know there's somebody here. There's so many contributions we can make to make your work better and easier. And that's why conversations like this are critical, so that we can share ideas. And from sharing these ideas, we see how we can better collaborate to make your work advance faster, right? So the second thing is to identify those who are already doing work as touching the regional bloc and see how you can add value to them. Your value can be like strategies. It can be like decisions, data-driven decisions. For example, with the work we have done at the Association of African Startups for over 5 years, we have identified some of the major problems that African entrepreneurs are dealing with and the possible solutions that they need. With this level of data-driven answers that we have as an organization, we can better inform other organizations who are doing things around AfCFTA dialogues, who are doing things around all the different consulting practices they are doing to elevate the future of African prosperity. That's number two. Identify companies or organizations or people or movements or agendas that are doing everything around the AfCFTA to make you work. That's number two. Number three is to start from where you are at. You have listened to today's conversation. My conversation, you will listen to the diverse view of all our teachers and experts. Identify 3 things you want to start doing today from these conversations. Can I tell you one of the things about learning? Every time you find yourself in a room where conversations are happening, never be the person that conversations go over your head. Never. Never look at where you are at and say, this information, how is it benefiting me today? And then you throw it away. Never be that person. If you allow yourself be that person, your heart will be close to wisdom. And a man who is not wise will not have strategic direction. If you don't have strategic direction, you roll around cycles. So sometimes the reason why it feels as though you are doing a lot, but it doesn't seem to be adding up to much is because you are not strategically directed. And strategic direction is a function of execution of knowledge. Execution of knowledge, especially identifying the knowledge you need and executing upon it. That's how strategic direction comes. So the third thing to do from today's conversation is identify top 3 things you want to start doing now. Set them out as goals, put systems in place to start executing immediately. That is how strategically directed. When you're strategically directed towards a particular goal, a vision, and focus, what happens is eventually you will get to that destination. In fact, while you're on the way to that destination, because you're strategically directed, those who you need on that journey would meet you because you're on the strategic direction to where you are going. And so, with these few points of mine, I declare today's conversation on Africa's our symposium, Real-Time Challenges with the AfCFTA. I declare it open, and I welcome all of you once again to today's conversation. Pay attention with all your heart, as I know that from here, some of you will be wiser, some of you will get strategic direction that would expand the value of your business in your heart, but also expand the value of your vision in paper. God bless you, and thank you all so very much.
Thank you so much, Madam President, for gearing us up, motivating us to be part of this conversation. And one thing I like that she said is, do not join this conversation with the, where am I at? I don't think I need this. You actually need this if you're an African entrepreneur, because you need this to be able to scale. Thank you so much, ma'am. Once again, we are thanking all our sponsors for sponsoring and being part of this initiative. So without further ado, I'm going to be introducing our first speaker, which is Ms. Eberechukwu Ezike. She is the founder of AfCFTA Dialogues. She's also a corporate and commercial lawyer at G. Elias, a top-tier business law firm in Nigeria, where she provides legal solutions to complex transactions for both domestic and international clients. She also has a passion for intra-African trade. She founded AfCFTA Dialogues to drive awareness and support the effective implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, particularly among African businesses. She serves on the AfCFTA Youth Advisory Council and is an alumni of reputable institutions, including the Afrinbank Academy, the Trade Law Center, and the Future Females Business School. As a member of the Global Shapers Community, an initiative of the World Economic Forum, she previously led the Ibadan Hub, where she spearheaded export readiness, training, and capacity building programs for MSMEs aiming to trade under AfCFTA. Eberechukwu holds an exceptional academic record, having graduated with first-class honors in law from the University of Ibadan and the Nigerian Law School. She holds a Master's of Law degree with distinction from the University of Ibadan. She currently serves as the Secretary of the International Trade Law Committee of the Nigerian Bar Association section on business law. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation, where she's going to be simplifying AfCFTA for us. Please, you have the floor. I would also make you a co-host in case you need to share your slides.
Yeah, I need to. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you to the founder of this amazing association, Madam Just, for inviting me to speak on this very important topic. As you were talking, I could see your passion and how very much passionate you are about the AfCFTA, not just the AfCFTA, but the entire vision of the African economic integration and how businesses, must take advantage of this. And I mean, it's such an amazing work you're doing with the Association of African Startups. So well done, ma'am. All right. I'm going to share my screen right now. So let me do that. Please, can you confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
can you
We can
confirm
see
that you
your
can
screen.
see my
Yes,
screen?
you can see it.
Okay, great. All right. So yes, I'm going to be simplifying the African Continental Free Trade Agreement or the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. I know much has been said about this agreement. It can be very high level, especially with the kind of negotiations that happen. And a lot of times it's so easy for startups, for businesses or young entrepreneurs to just look at it and just gloss over it. You're wondering what are they saying? Everybody's just talking about the AfTA, the AfCFTA, what exactly it is. And that's going to be my work today to break down this important agreement and make you understand what exactly is the purpose, what is this agreement trying to achieve, and why you should be concerned about it as a business owner or as a startup. Okay, so yeah, let's keep moving. So let me just make this bigger. Okay, great. Yeah, so this is to help African startups understand and leverage AfCFTA. I've talked about that already. Look at the origin and the purpose of this agreement, and how to prepare your business to take advantage of this agreement, export readiness and all, and then how to start trading under the AfCFTA. So what is the AfCFTA? So this is the first thing you need to understand is that this is a multilateral agreement, it's an initiative of the African Union. The vision of a Pan-African, the Pan-African vision of an integrated and prosperous Africa did not start now. It's been in talk since uh, the coming of the Organization of African Union, the African Union, and then the African Economic Community, the Abuja Treaty. There have been so many conversations on this. And then I mean one of the recommendations of that treaty, the Abuja Treaty, was the establishment of a free trade area. And then years after, in 2018, African nations came together and signed the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, or the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area. And then it was signed by 54 African countries of the African Union, with the exception of Eritrea. And of course, the agreement needed to come into force because the way international law works is that after signing, there's a process called ratification. What ratification means is that you as a country, you have accepted to be bound by the terms of this agreement. So the agreement required 24 countries to ratify it. And then in 2019, we saw the energy, the push. African countries were excited about it. And then we had a lot of them ratifying it within a space of 1 year. This is very rare when you're talking about international treaties like this. Usually we put time after signing for countries to, ratify. But it looks like every African country or African countries were very much interested in this agreement and wanted it to come into force quickly. And so after the 24th country ratified this agreement, it came into force in 2019. But of course, coming into force means that the agreement is operational, right? But then we know that there are a lot of tools, a lot of systems, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of negotiations that will still be put in place for the agreement to be fully operational. But what you need to know right now is that the agreement is kicked off. The AfCFTA is in force, and everyone or businesses are now thinking of how they can leverage this important agreement to trade within Africa duty free. Okay, so the purpose of the agreement is, I mean, I have here to create a single continental market for goods and services across Africa. So one of the objective or the most important objective of this agreement is to eliminate tariffs and non-tariff barriers. I'll just break this. Tariffs are duties, custom duties imposed on goods when you're importing them into the country. So it could be any percent really. It could be as high as 100%. I don't know if you're following the trade war or you're following the US reciprocal tariff agenda, and you saw how the US, raised and increased tariffs on a lot of products coming from other countries. Even Nigeria was affected. It was as high as 100 to 120% for certain countries. So those are duties. And what they do is that they make goods more expensive, really. Imagine having to export to another African country, and you are getting as high as 50% tariff imposed on your product. It will not only make your goods expensive, it will make them business difficult. And of course, the ultimate bearers will be the consumers. And you would think that, oh, the consumers will just increase price, but then it also affects the competitiveness of your product as well. So what the agreement seeks to do is to eliminate tariff on 90% of goods. So it's going to be a progressive elimination, and then for a particular period of years, and to get to a point where duties are completely eliminated on 90% of African goods. The agreement also seeks to facilitate the movement of persons, capital, goods, and services for African economic integration. Because the AfCFTA is not just about goods. It's not just about trading goods. When you talk about trade, sometimes thinking it's just about movement of goods, but it also includes services. There's a protocol on the AfCFTA called trading services. Basically, export of services. You can be there and you're enjoying a service from another country. You can go into another country to enjoy their service. You can decide to establish, have a commercial presence in another country, more like a subsidiary, a representative office, depending on the legal system of that country. Or you as a natural person can move to another country to enjoy their service, to work there. So we see a lot of this happening with the old Japa syndrome, where people go into other countries to study, to get some medical treatment, to do business, that's service. And for service, while you're not so bothered about tariffs, because tariffs are only imposed on goods, the major barrier to service, to trade and service, are the non-tariff barriers. And this could be in immigration policies. This could also be in maybe technical requirements and all other things. So what the agreement seeks to do is also to progressively eliminate these barriers. It would involve a lot of negotiations, no doubt, because these are sovereign countries. Everybody has the right to regulate their own territory, and this is still a free trade area. This is still the lowest level of integration. Of course, there are future plans, because, like I said, the idea is that we would have an integrated and prosperous Africa. And I know that Madam just spoke a lot about this when she was giving that very powerful introduction of African economic integration. So this is the first step, really. And then, of course, the agreements, I talked about eliminating tariffs on 90% of goods, and then to support industrial development, economic diversification, value development for economic scale, to promote inclusive growth, poverty reduction, and employment, especially for women, youth, and MSMEs. The AfCFTA has a protocol on women and youth in trade, and the protocol on digital trade, which is very favorable for small businesses. And what the protocol seeks to do is to put them, to create an enabling environment for women, for youth to be able to trade, because women experience barriers differently from other traders, especially women engaging in informal cross-border trade. So the agreement is very mindful of that. Then to enhance the competitiveness of the economies of state parties within the continent and the global market. We talked about this when I was talking about tariffs. Once you remove all of these barriers, state parties, businesses can be competitive. So at a glance, the objective is to boost intra-African trade, which is currently very low, about 14 or 15%, unlike other regions that boast of 50%, 60%, other regions like the EU, like the the Asian community. So other regional blocs outside Africa are very, very strong when it comes to intra-regional trade. But we don't trade among ourselves. Africans don't do business among themselves, you know. So this agreement is supposed to boost intra-African trade because when the barriers are removed, and it will be easier to trade among ourselves. The market size is huge. You're talking about 1.4 billion people. And that's why this agreement is the largest agreement by the number of participating countries. It also combines a GDP of 3.4 trillion USD, and the scope of the agreement is broad. Goods, services, dispute resolution, investment, competition, intellectual property, digital trade, women and youth. And all of this, they have separate protocols, like separate agreements on all those aspects. So it's a very, very extensive, ambitious agreement. And the long-term goal, like I mentioned, is an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, because the AfCFTA aligns with the Pan-African vision, which is an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force, in the global arena. So why should you be concerned about this agreement as a startup? You'll be wondering, okay, yeah, I mean, why should I bother about this agreement? So one of the things the AfCFTA will do for you is market expansion. You have access to customers across African countries without high tariffs, right? And I know you'll be wondering that, oh, people already, I mean, before the emergence of the AfCFTA, people have been expanding, right? But this agreement will make it easier to expand because now tariffs have been reduced, barriers will be eliminated. So it's like a very even level playing ground. You can just, expand to other African countries. There is accessibility for you without the barriers becoming a problem. So reduced barriers is another, great advantage. Lower cost of doing business across borders, because that's the objective of this agreement, to eliminate barriers to trade. And of course, you're able to compete continentally and develop regional solutions. Because now you're not just thinking about, you're Nigeria, you're not just thinking about Nigeria, you're Kenya, you're not just thinking about Kenya, you're thinking about Africa, the entire continent, and you can compete continentally and develop solutions that affect the entire continent. So, I don't know if anyone has any question on that, but if you have a question on what I've said, the first part has to do with the AfCFTA, you can just put that in the comment section. So this section is now how to prepare your business for the AfCFTA. Now you've heard about this agreement. It looks very interesting. Oh, you can see the opportunities. They're there. They're numerous. The train has started moving, and you have to jump in, right? You can't just be looking at this and watch others. And that's why this event has been organized anyway for you. So now, how to prepare your business for the AfCFTA? First thing is to lay the groundwork. You want to conduct market research. Very important. Identify demand for your product or services in other African markets. Then product readiness. Align product with regional standards, with international standards. This is one of the things that I'm like really particular about, because a lot of times businesses, very small businesses, they do have export readiness issue, because it's not just about making a product, you just pack it. I'm talking about goods right now. It's not just about doing that and say, oh, just going to develop something, just pack it and start selling. I mean, that can be fine within your neighborhood or with family and friends. But when you're now talking about international, you have to start thinking global. And I think you need to even start now. From the moment you start your business, Don't look at your business as a small business. But fine, you're classified as MSMEs for policy purposes, for funding purposes, for regulatory purposes. But you need to start thinking global because one day you move from MSMEs to multinational. You would move from just being a startup to being a unicorn. So you have to start thinking global. You need to think of how you can align your product with regional standards, getting all your standards correctly where applicable. Then digital readiness. You need to ensure that you have an online presence. The world is becoming very, like I said, very global, and not just necessarily but because of how easy it is to access information. Social media has made it very easy for businesses. These days now, if you want to know somebody, just go and check their online footprints. I remember when I was so I was doing a research, we're trying to select some speakers for a particular event, and we had names. So I was not checking. There was a particular one that was suggested. I was checking. I didn't say anything about the work, about what the person was doing. Nothing was just there. And then the other speaker, I could see a lot of things. It was easier to push for the other speaker because I could see evidence that, oh, this person has been doing this thing. This person has this track record. So you need to be digitally ready. Make sure that you're putting yourself out. You can't be blinking in the dark and expect people to notice you. It will not happen. You have to come into the light. So integrate e-commerce capabilities, have an online presence, then register with relevant agencies like the NEPC for Nigeria, this is National Export Promotion Council, the chambers of commerce in different, there's Lagos, there's Abuja, in different, and I'm talking about Nigeria now, but for for other countries, I'm sure you would have relevant organizations that do all of this thing. The National AfCFTA office, let them know you, get updates, get training. You want to develop yourself. You want to know more about these things. You can't just be in isolation. You have to be with people who know these things. So get updates, training, trade facilitation info from them. The National AfCFTA Coordination Office, I know they do a lot in Nigeria. I know they do a lot for small businesses. I see a lot of these things online. But if you're not following them, if you don't know anything about them, you won't know. The other time we did a particular competition and they gave funding to some businesses who could provide digital solutions to some of these intra-African problems that affect trade. That's opportunity. But if you're not following them, if you've not registered with them, you won't have access to these opportunities. So then legal compliance and documentation, very important, especially because I'm a lawyer. And I know how important this is. You must be formally registered in your country of operation. In fact, you can't even register with the NEPC if you're not registered because they will ask for your certificate of incorporation or your business, your certificate of registration as a business name. They will ask for all of these things. So you must be formally registered. That's for Nigeria, that's the CAC. Then you register with the NEPC. For SON, that's the standard organization of Nigeria. You need to have your man cap if you're exporting outside. Sun cap is for those importing, but for you should be more concerned with the man cap you're exporting outside. The NAFDAC, where applicable, of course, not every product. So if you're dealing with a product that is regulated under NAFDAC, you need to get your certification. So this is how you're preparing yourself, really. You're not just waiting and just watching. You're laying the foundation and the groundwork, and you're being strong legally. In tax compliance, be in good standing with your national tax authorities. IP protection, protect your brand. You're going global. You don't want to start having issues, right? Infringement and all of that. So protect your brand. Then building capacity and networks. Build strategic partnerships. Find distributors or logistic allies in target markets. Join Pan-African network like TAS, like Active Dialogues, so you can be better informed, you can be aware. Then invest in training. There are a lot of trainings that is going on. Free, paid, take advantage of them. Very important. Train your staff, train yourself, on international trade opportunities, on export readiness, how to, rules of origin. There are a lot of things really, and you can't even have all of them in one class. In 1 hour. There are a lot of aspects that you need to be concerned about as a small business who wants to trade. So of course, then consulting too, because you really can't, at the end of the day, you will need advice. You can't do everything by yourself. So you have to work with consultants, you have to work with lawyers, you have to work with partners. You need to build partnerships, you need to invest in training. So how to trade under the AfCFTA, I think what I've just said in section 2, which is laying the foundation, should have given you an insight into what you need to do to prepare to trade. So this will just be a build up on what I've said. So like I said, identify target markets, use trade data to look at demand and gaps, check product eligibility, determine rules of origin, understand how to qualify your goods as made in Africa. Because it's not just any good that can be traded under the AfCFTA. There's something called rules of origin. Just the way you have a passport that shows where you come from, your good or the good you're exporting would have a certificate of origin that shows where it's coming from. And then apply to your national designated body, ensure logistic readiness. So this is for goods really, secure packaging routes and shipping channels. Just make inquiries and ensure that you're logistically ready. Then facilitate payments and delivery. Use trusted payment gateways and tracking systems. Because trade finance is another very important aspect of trade. So to export finance, you want to ensure that you have money to facilitate that trade. And of course, before it comes in, because a lot of times, I think a lot of small businesses usually have issues with pre-export finance. When you have this large order, you don't know how to go about it. They're not giving you the money ahead, right? So you have to see how you can balance it. You're going to use letters of credit, documentary collection, or whatever trade finance mechanism that is suitable for you. There are other innovative ones now called like factoring, where you can, use your receivables as some sort of guarantee in that sense. You can get money ahead and then get from a factor and once at a discount. So once you've exported the goods and you've been paid, of course, the payment will go to the factor. But then there are agreements that you will have to draft for this as well, your factoring agreements. Sometimes the factor would require a guarantee, from a bank. So, like I said, different trade finance mechanisms, understanding the ones that is convenient for you, that is suitable for you as a startup and as a business. But just ensure that you also want to also hedge yourself against forex and all of those inflation. And also you have to, like I said, work with advisors, work with lawyers, work with consultants, bankers. So after digital platforms, these are platforms where you can just really get information and just know what is happening. After Hub, this is a digital marketplace and business resource portal for SMEs. Just Google, you check it, you see it, you can register. Then trade information portals. For this particular one, the Nigerian customs, they have a website. Their website is like the trade information portal for Nigeria. So whatever you need, information on market access, custom procedure is there. They're trying as much as possible to make this thing very digital. And that's because of, this is all to reduce barriers to trade. Because trade facilitation is a very important aspect of trade. And then, customs, they are the ones at the helm of trade facilitation. So you can get information online when you check their website, ask questions, Then each with Africa initiatives to promote digital trade tools for MSMEs. AfreximBank PAPS. If you've not heard of the Pan-African Payment Settlement System, it's an initiative of AfreximBank to make it easy to be paid, really. It's as simple as that. So what this does is that you're able to send money in your local currency and the recipient will receive it in their local currency. So it's very easy for cross-border payment. This is what AfreximBank PAPS is doing. And it has started. They've been onboarding banks, they've been onboarding fintech platforms. So you want to find out from your financial advisor, how you can benefit from PAPS. And I know that Nigeria CBN recently released a guideline to reduce KYC requirements for, I think, about 2,000 USD transfer or something. So these are things that you want to put your ears on the ground so you can be abreast of all this important information, because information is power in taking advantage of these agreements. Then, of course, navigating challenges. I'm sure that Tanatsiwa will talk more about this. But yeah, logistics and transport across borders will still be big, huge. We would see all of this infrastructure bottlenecks, regulatory diversity. This is why you need to work with legal practitioners, currency exchange and payments, and all of that. Then dispute resolution. So, as with a particular dispute I'm currently working on now that has to do with trade finance, really. Has to do with payments. And you look at all of these things, you'll be wondering that it will not happen to me, it will not happen to me until it happens to you. So start properly by ensuring that you're not working alone, you're working with advisors, you're working with lawyers on all of this. Okay, then I talked about support and funding opportunities, because sometimes small businesses, you're thinking, oh, this is a lot, where will I get money from? Like I said, information is power. I mentioned that the National Action Coordination Committee for Nigeria, for AfCFTA, recently gave funding to certain businesses, or to certain startups, really, who provided digital solutions to some intra-African trade problems. They put it out there, they add applicants, and they give funding. So the thing is, you have to, follow all of these channels to be able to know what's happening. And also, after national implementation committees, they provide localized support for businesses. In every country, there is an implementation committee or a coordination committee for the AfCFTA. And that's one of the mechanisms that the Secretariat has put in place to ensure the implementation of the AfCFTA. So you have it in your country, in Nigeria. And in Nigeria, for instance, because I'm from Nigeria, but wherever you're from in Africa, as long as that country is a signatory to the AfCFTA or has ratified the AfCFTA, there's always an implementation committee. So ask questions, make inquiries, reach out to them. I'm a small business, or I'm a startup, I want to start, where do I start? All of these things. I know export promotion agencies help you with compliance and matchmaking and all of that. Then I talked about the African Trade Observatory. This is an initiative of the African Union to access real-time trade data, all of that. And of course, funding support from banks, AfreximBank. AfreximBank is the African Export-Import Bank. They're the ones who created PAPS. And I know AfreximBank give a lot of funds to banks who also lend to small businesses. So, and AfreximBank facilitates inter-African trade. So, of course, their priority would be to facilitate inter-African trade funds like that. So, you have to, follow them and watch and see all of this. And the commercial banks are now being at the helm of international trade. Recently, AfreximBank had a particular partnership with any bank. And what AfreximBank is doing is also, because AfreximBank is in Cairo, right? They have to work with commercial banks. Even when AfreximBank is doing any deals, they usually would work with commercial banks. So they work with commercial banks. So your local bank would have certain information that you might not be aware of. You just think you just go there, deposit and all. But when it comes to trade facilitation, trade finance, your local bank sometimes would have all this information, most times, because they work with all these multilateral banks or the CFI. So you can ask questions about accessing loans that have favorable interest, even for small businesses, or other trade finance mechanism. And of course, we know about AfCFTA, 20 Illumini Foundation, and VC networks that focus on intra-African trade. There are lots of venture capitalists, private equity firms that what they do is they fund businesses, on intra-African trade. So you have to, like I said, ask questions. Question is power. Information is power. You want to, put your ears on the ground and just should be abreast of all these updates, all of these things that is happening in the trade space. And I know it can be a lot. It can be a lot, but just take it one step at a time. Like Madam just said when she started, you take note of 3 things that you do. If number 1 is, I will start making inquiries on all of these things to see how I can position my business to take advantage of the AfCFTA. That's awesome. Okay, so yeah, my final thoughts would be this. The AfCFTA unlocks one of the world's largest trade opportunities. Yeah. Startups can scale faster by thinking Pan-African early. I said it when I started that you should not build your business like you're just building any other business. No, you have to start thinking global, thinking Pan-African. And it's from the foundation, your legal work. What kind of company are you registering? Are you taking advantage of, are you protecting your IP? Are you protecting your brand? Have you put the structures in place? Are you getting counsel or are you just doing things anyhow? I think we had one. I did the training for startups, legal compliance for startups one time like that. And one of us was asking me a question. So we wanted to, because we needed a particular partnership to scale a software solution. They didn't have the funding, so they wanted to give some sort of other consideration, which is equity, and then some other deadly consideration. So deadly because when I looked at it, I was like, you're literally giving your company away. You don't just know this, but you're just thinking, we'll just do it for how much? So you have to, to get counsel really. And yeah, think Pan-African early by putting the groundwork in place, invest in compliance, partnerships, and digital infrastructure. Stay informed, stay compliant, and stay connected. Yeah. So I think I have come to the end of my presentation. If you have any question for me, I'll be happy to take them now.
Thank you so much, Iberi, for making that brief, short, and very, very simplified. Like our topic said, simplifying AfCFTA. So please, if you have questions, there are a lot of things. If you have questions, please drop it. Like we said, these conversations are conversations that would introduce you to this agreement, and it's something that we still want to keep on doing so that you get familiar with it. So you might not be able to get everything at once, but what she has taught or spoke about today, do you have questions? Let me just ask one question on the behalf. You said origins, that the goods or services has to come from Africa, like made in Africa. So can you expatiate more on that? We have some businesses that might do production or in maybe abroad, they come and assemble it in Nigeria, or they're importing, or let me say some people are selling products now and they're importing their products. Would that qualify to be under AfCFTA? Or let's just if you can just expand on that.
Sorry, what was the last thing you said? I'm not sure.
No, I said
got
if you
the
can
last
just
question.
expand more on that. Thank you. That's what I said.
Okay, on the rules of origin. On rules of origin, right? Okay.
Yes.
So rules of origin. Okay, I'll just really break it. Is a It's a technical thing. Then at the end of the day, it's the designated body, the customs that would, determine where your goods originate from, really. I mean, before they can issue you a certificate of origin. But what you should know is this. Like I said, every good has an origin. You see, made in China, made in Nigeria, made in, made in different things and all. So the thing is that for the AfCFTA, our rules of origin it's not very, it's not, it's also almost like, what is being used globally. And there are three proofs to show that a good originates from somewhere. The first thing is only obtained. You can prove that the good was only obtained from this particular country or this particular region. And I'll give example. So for instance, more agricultural produce. It's very easy to say, okay, if it comes from, you planted it in Nigeria, it comes from Nigeria, you can prove that, oh, this was here and no and everything. Then another classification is substantial transformation. So this particular one usually would have like a certain percentage of what can be external and what can be local. Now, it's usually given when, so for sometimes now, let me give an example. You imported something, right? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello? Okay. So for substantial transformation, now the example I'm giving has to do with the value addition, really. So a certain percentage of the product's value must be added in the originating country. And it cannot just be aesthetics. It can't be I import chocolate bars, and then I just do the packaging in Nigeria, and then it's classified as originating from Nigeria. No. And then for substantial transformation, sometimes in the production process, certain production process must occur in that country to be deemed to have originated from the country. So let's say cassava, for instance, you import cassava. The processing to make it gari or whatever you're packaging it as now happens in Nigeria, right? That can be deemed as a substantial transformation and originating from Nigeria. Another one would be still under that substantial transformation will be in change in tariff classification. So every good has this HX code classification that shows where it's coming from, or that really shows what kind of good it is. That's what the customs really work with. So if a particular good, when I imported it or something, is HX1, for instance, for example, by the time it has undergone transformation, it has moved from HX1 to HX5. Yeah, that means a change has happened. So let me give an example. I'll still use Gary for Gary. So cassava, you bring it in you import it, for instance, it's HX1. And when you have done the transformation, it is now HX10, for example, as an example. So that is a form of substantial transformation. And that can show that the product originates from that country. Well, like I said, it really depends on the particular rule. The AfCFTA, they have their own rules of origin that have been adopted. And these calculations is not just, it can be a bit technical because a lot of things will be looked at, your processes, what exactly you're adding before you can give that certificate that this originates from this particular country. But just know that generally, it's either the good is only obtained and or substantial transformation has happened that would now make the good to be deemed to originate from the originating country or from the country where that transformation took place.
Thank you so much for explaining this, because recently I saw from one of our partners that Avila, that's for Nigeria. Avila was one of the first brands that traded under AfCFTA. Actually, the first brand in Nigeria that traded, and this is a skincare brand. Now, this brand is
Yeah.
manufacturing its products internally. And why I asked this question is because some of us now we just want to import things and just say we want to come and trade it under AfCFTA. It might not really work, as we are learning now from Ms. Ibera. It might not really
Yeah.
work because they want a little bit of, but I say because of tax implications, a little bit of income coming to us. It should not just Africa should not be like a dumping ground. So for you to trade under
Yes.
AfCFTA, you need to be a very innovative entrepreneur.
Exactly.
You need to start looking at production. So this is why we are saying that as a startup, you need to be part of this conversation. So it helps your thinking. So you're not just looking like, oh, I just want to come and dump. It would not work on that factor. We are learning that today.
Yeah.
It would not work. There has to be some sort of transformation. And now because of trade rules and the rest, we cannot just push out foreign product like that, but there has to be some sort of value that has happened in your country of origin, like she has said. And she has said, not just packaging. You cannot just say, oh, we packaged it here, and that is value. And I like that they are doing that with their sector. So thank you so much. And I hope this is sinking in with our audience today. You need to start looking at value, how your product or your services has value in your country of origin. Very important if you want to trade under AfCFTA. Please, do we have other questions? Do we have other questions that would
Yes, I
like?
have a question.
Yes. You
Can I
can.
go ahead? Okay.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Ebere. It was such an insightful class. You mentioned the PAPS, the Pan-African Payment System, that the Afrexim Bank
Yeah.
created, and how that they're onboarding banks and fintech organizations as a medium of exchange of value in terms of money. Is that PAPS system accessible as an app like other payment gateways, or it has to be through the platform of a bank? So you see how we have Paystack, we can download Paystack.
Okay.
Is this like a software system, or is an app that African entrepreneurs can access on the go?
Okay. So it's mostly through the platform of through banks, really. I think it's more like a software, but it would work with banks, and even the fintech platforms is still going to be through banks.
Okay.
So it's more through banks, really.
Okay. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then even for banks, just even add, like I said, it's a software that will work with banks and their banks platform. So even for banks mobile apps, you can use it there. So it's not like a separate I mean, for now, for what I've been saying that they're doing, it's not like a separate application that they're doing. They're working in partnership with banks and fintech platform, so where you can use their resources and access PAPs there.
Thank you so much. I know we were trying to conduct some research at some time about some banks that have started using apps. I think we were able to collate some. I'm sure UBA is part of them. I'm sure about that bank. So again, it's very important again when you are choosing your banks for your business. You see, this is why we are like have conversations like this. You have to be futuristic in decisions you make as a business owner. You're not just, oh, is this bank that is working? And let me just go. You have to be very strategic. Like if you want to, which bank is going to help you trade across borders? I'm sure I know if we check the back end, we'll be able to see some of the banks, but I'm very sure UBA is part of those banks. So it's very, very important. This is why we have conversations like this. Please, do we have other questions we want to ask her? Again, like I said, we are just introducing this, simplifying it, making it easy for you to understand. We're still going to have conversations around it. We're probably going to have conversations around if you're having services, how you would do it. If you're having goods, how you would do it. But it's very important that we are starting with the foundation, more about introducing you to it. So please, do we have other questions we have to have? Please ask questions. ask questions? Was it that it was so simplified that we understand everything? That means it's a fantastic job because everybody's like, oh my God, I understand it. It's so simplified. Please, do we have questions? Please give few minutes again for people to ask questions. But in the meantime, again, we want to thank our sponsors for sponsoring this event. We're thanking the Borderless Trade Network, we're thanking AfCFTA Dialogues, we're taking Africa Trade Solutions Consulting, and our partner, we're taking our partner in Venture Solutions. So please, if we have questions, or while we're still waiting for questions, do you have anything you want to just say about your session and about this in general? So if we don't have any question after that, we'll just round up the session.
Are you talking about me? Are you talking to me?
Yes, please. I said, you have any maybe like a summary you just want to give as regards your session or something, or like encouraging startups while we still wait for questions? And if after you're done and there is none, just round up with your session for your section rather.
Oh, okay. Okay, I guess I was very I was very fast. Okay, I just looked at the time that was given. I saw, oh wow, I was actually very fast. When I saw simplifying, I just like, let me just break this down much as possible. I think I'll just say this is that like what I've always been saying is you might not be able to get everything in one session, really. Like I said, it's there was a particular training I did. I was just on trade in goods, like, and the trade in goods had so many annexes on facilitation, remember a lot of things. So sometimes you would even have to like to be it's in depth. That's the thing. But what I would advise that you check from here is the some key things that have been mentioned: the issue of origin and value addition to your products, making wise decisions about banks and all of that, because of course PAPS has kicked off and they're partnering with banks, CBN and other major banks. So you want to ask questions. How open is this bank in facilitating trade or in giving finance for small businesses, for startups, before you just jump on, jump and create your account and all of that. Make inquiries, ask questions. And I think one of the things we do at after dialogues is we put out this information. We are always constantly giving updates on the AfCFTA. We're always, talking about this agreement implementation. We even have a conversation next week on this whole tariffs thing and the AfCFTA. I know I mentioned about the US tariff system, the reciprocal tariffs, and how everybody was panicking, like how it's going to affect us. But there's so many opportunities for me that one of them is to look inwards. Look inwards in Africa. You have your agreements, you have your resources, you have the people to implement this thing. It's going to take a lot of political will, time, because free trade agreements, do not just start and then boom, everything has aligned. It took years for the EU to get to where they're from. It took years for China, to become one of the biggest manufacturing hub in the world, and India as well. So it would take time, right? But the most important thing is that you're preparing yourself, you're being aware, you're joining platforms like this, you're being educated and putting that in place, the groundwork, the foundation, everything you need to make your business Pan-African.
Thank you so much. Since we do not have any question, we are saying a very, very, very big thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge. We enjoyed your session and we look forward to working more with you on this topic. So both African entrepreneurs, on behalf of the management, I'm saying very, very big thank you. Thank you and God bless you. Thank you. Right. So
thank you very much.
Yes. So yes, hope we are learning a lot. Hope we are learning a lot. Your goods must have an origin in Africa. So if you are not having that right now, you need to go back to your drawing board and start thinking about it, especially if you want to scale. very, very important. Secondly, you have to start looking at banks that have the caps in them, right? So like we said, this conversation is a conversation that will start helping you think about scaling your business. Very, 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 very important. So I'm going to be inviting our next speaker who has joined in from the onset, and we're saying a very, very, very big thank you, sir, for being part of it. He's going to be talking about the challenges. Now she has simplified it. Now we're going to be talking about the challenges business owners encounter using AfCFTA, right? And his name is hold on. Give me a minute, right? Yes, and his name is Mr. Tanatsiwa Dambazo. Dambuza. I'm so sorry. Mr. Tanatsiwa Dambuza. He's the founder of the African Trade Solutions Consulting. That is a premier consulting firm dedicated to transforming Africa's economic landscape through expertise in international trade, regional integration, and sustainable inclusion. He's also an experienced development knowledge manager and researcher. He's also a published academic writer. Sir, you have floor. I'm going to also be making you a co-host in case you need to share your slides.
Oh, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good morning. I think it's afternoon your time. Good afternoon.
Yeah, it's already 12:30 and 12:30, around 12:30. But thank you so much. So basically, thank you so much for a great introduction, and thank you, Madam Ibe, for really awesome opening remarks, which really encourages us as Africans to venture into business and to take the African Continental Free Trade Area seriously. Especially this encouragement really goes to us, most of us who are small to medium enterprises, who sometimes really are not so much invested in these trade agreements. And then I also want to thank Ibere for really simplifying the African Continental Free Trade Area for us. Some of the things, some of the things are really technical, and some of them are legal, and they need expertise like you to come through and simplify these things for us, so that us as young people, us as women, us as small to medium enterprises really get to understand what are the nitty-gritties of the AfCFTA and how best we can take advantage of it. So I don't know, may you kindly make the Africa Trade Solutions the co-host, because the camera that I'm using is on my phone.
Yes, we have done that, sir.
Okay, I don't know if you can see my screen now.
Yes,
Okay, so basically I'm going to look at the challenges and constraints that are faced by the business persons under the AfCFTA. I think Iberia has already given us the background and the intro on what the AfCFTA is all about and how it is going to really affect most of the businesses, African economies, and so forth. So I'm going to really start by looking into the current business environment and external conditions that are there in Africa, around the world, where the AfCFTA is being implemented. First of all, you realize that at the moment, intra-African trade is really low. And according to the findings of the Africa Trade Report by the Afrexim Bank, AfDB, and many other organizations in 2022 found out that there was 13.7% trade in Africa, like intra-African trade, which fell from 14.5 in 2021. But if you look even up to now, we are now in 2025, which is the 5th year since the AfCFTA has really started fully operationalized, basing on what the agreement says. You will realize that we haven't reached above 16% of intra-African trade. When we're talking about intra-African trade, we are talking about official trade between and amongst Africans. But you realize that it may be more than that, more than the 20%, the 13%, the 14%, the 16%, if we take into consideration the informal cross-border trade, which is rampant and very huge amongst African countries. So some of the causes of this was the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, which closed the borders, and also there are political instabilities across Africa. It's very difficult to trade when there is war. So if you go to the Sahel region, where most of the coups in the past have happened in the past 5 years, you realize that it's very difficult for one person to use that as a trade route, maybe from maybe it's very difficult for you to really pass through Niger during the time of the coup when you want to go to Nigeria, and so forth, pass through Burkina Faso, pass through Mali during that time when there was coups in the early 2020s. So you realize that may be one of the reasons why the intra-African trade are also reduced. There are also many wars that are happening across the continent. We go to DRC, which is also a trade route for most of the SADC countries when they want to get to the Eastern African community. So it also reduces intra-African trade. And another thing that is happening at the moment is that there is an increase in what we call the disintegration of the world itself, of multilateralism at large. We have seen what Trump has been doing since 2016, him withdrawing from several trade agreements. But this has not only happened there. In Europe, we are also seeing that happening in Africa. Let's talk about the formation of the alliance of the Sahel states. The 3 countries withdrew from the ECOWAS. So this is all happening in the backdrop of the AfCFTA. We are trying to integrate Africa in a disintegrating world, which is very, very unfortunate. Of course, they may have tangible reasons for them to say that we want to come out of this agreement. But this is just a sign that may also make other countries lose hope in the agreement, because remember, all these ECOWAS, all these SADCs, all these EAC are the building blocks of the African Continental Free Trade Area. So they are significant and very relevant, and it is very good for countries to participate in those agreements. And if there are challenges, it's always good to then resolve those challenges together. And then, of course, movement in Africa is very difficult. Only 5 of the around 34 to 36 countries which have signed the protocol on the free movement of persons. They have really ratified it, and this limits the movements of people from one country to another. It's very difficult for me to go to Egypt because there are a lot of things that are required from me as a person from the Southern Africa. Sometimes it's very expensive for me to then go there because I need at least 2 flights, or I need about 20 hours together. So this is the backdrop where we are living in, and the AfCFTA, yet the AfCFTA is trying to be implemented. These are some of the challenges that we are facing as a continent in the backdrop of the African Continental Free Trade Area, and all these challenges affect our businesses, especially the small to medium enterprises. So let's move on. I think if you look in Africa, we have challenges in terms of logistics, transportation, and the travel costs. And in intra-African flights, costs especially between the major capitals, costs between 500 to 850, which is very expensive, especially for a person who is in business. How could you spend around maybe $500 on a one-way route? Maybe I'm coming from Zimbabwe to Nigeria. I want to sell my goods, or I want to send a cargo there, and it costs around this amount. It's very difficult for you to then participate in intra-African trade. I'm not saying about the AfCFTA, but literally just trade within Africa. When you can use the same amount to get something that is cheaper in China, you can even go there and buy it and come back with it and sell it again and make more profit than the one that you are making when you are just buying something from Africa. So it's very difficult. And if I want to go to countries like Nigeria, I'm required to pay around 200 United States dollars for visa, or for me to just enter into that country. Imagine you are a business person and you want to buy some cassava in Nigeria and then sell it in your country. Do you think you can do that when I can easily go to the United Kingdom or to the China with a cheaper flight and also with a cheaper visa or easier visa requirements? So it's another question that we really need to answer as Africans. And also journeys can take up to like 20 hours with layovers, even when a direct flight might last around 3 hours. I have this friend of mine from Comoros who was in South Africa. Comoros is in Southern Africa Development Community, please note that. And when we wanted to go to South Africa, it took me around 1 hour to get to OR Tambo airport. And then my friend from Comoros, we departed on around same time. And remember, we are all in SADC. He had to go to Tanzania. This is, of course, it's part of SADC, but it is in East Africa. And then after Tanzania, he had to go to Ethiopia before coming to South Africa. So look, we are going to East Africa to come back to the same region or to SADC. So imagine how costly and how boring that is to just travel in Africa. It's really problematic, and there is no interlinkage, the transport infrastructure, logistical infrastructure that allows one person to travel directly from one capital to another, which is another challenge that the business also faces. I think you may also realize that the airlines are operating expensive in Africa are about 8% higher than a global industry average, which is fuel at 0.2%, maintenance over 20% of the costs. These higher costs, travel costs, directly disrupt business meetings and cross-border connectivity. In Africa, almost everything is very expensive, be it from the fuel and everything that affects the business. We are not only talking about these flights only, but even when you are traveling or using road, the transport costs are very costly. You look at what can I say? You look at like fuel prices here in Zimbabwe. 1 liter of petrol costs around $50, which is very high, compared to other continents where it costs less than $1. And you are expecting to transport something. Let's say I'm the one who's providing logistics. It means that the pricing that I'm going to put across is very high, because I'm also considering that transporting your goods. I'm also considering buying fuel and so forth. But if you then buy something from China and it's coming maybe by a ship and so forth, and the fuel costs are very cheaper, it simply means that the product is also going to get cheaper. So those are some of the challenges when it comes to logistics. Of course, I'm not talking about how expensive transporting goods in Africa are, because it is said that the cost of transporting a cargo here in Africa from one country to another is 3 times expensive than just transporting or shipping a product from China to a certain country in Africa. So it's very disappointing, and it's very huge challenges for a business person to really operate or to buy and sell products in Africa, despite us encouraging them to buy these goods within our continents, because the goods in Africa are really expensive. And as for me, I am more of an libertarian and I'm more of an individualist, and I believe that I have to buy something that is cheaper. I'm not going to buy something that is very expensive. For me to just promote intra-African trade, I'm going to buy something that is cheaper for me, because I also have other things that I need to do. I also need to save my money. I also need to travel around with my family and so forth. So, and I need money. So I can't buy something that is very expensive just for the sake that it is coming from Africa. It's a sad reality. And then, of course, the payments and transaction challenges. In Africa, we have about over 40 currencies. And these currencies are not really stable at all. For example, here in Zimbabwe, these currencies fluctuate each and every day. You don't know the rate until you ask someone in the street, say, what is the rate today? Of course, the government may have its own official rate, but there is also the rate that is being implemented in the streets, or where we live each and every day. So that is another challenge that we have, and we do not have. Of course, now we have the Pan-African Payment Settlement System, which is meant to integrate all these currencies on a single platform, so that when I pay something here, like in Nigeria, by the time the transaction is successful, it would already translated that into your own currency and so forth. But at the moment, with the current infrastructure that we have, despite that the banks are participating and they have already signed a memorandum of understandings, the others are saying that they are now working with the PAPs, you realize that the majority of Africans, they do not have access to formal banking infrastructure itself, which is another sad thing. I think according to different researches, there's around 48% of us as Africans really trust in the banking system. For example, here in Zimbabwe, it's very difficult for us to trust the banking system. Why? Because of the past experience that we have had with the banking systems. What has happened in Zimbabwe is when we changed into a multi-currency systems back in 2009, the monies that were in our accounts were we lost all the money that we had. And then in 2017, 16, 17, they also changed to say that this US dollar and the Zim dollar are now equal. And when they said that they are now equal, but in the streets, it was not equal. And they took the US dollar and gave us the Zim dollar. What happened? We lost millions of dollars in our accounts. So now the trust with the banking system is very, very difficult. But of course, the PAPS is there to really solve this challenge. And I really hope to see how it is going to be fully implemented, because I know that at the moment it's one of the operational instruments that are there, but I haven't really heard noise about it and how people are really implementing or using it to trade, because Zimbabwe, I know, is one of those countries that have already agreed to use the PAP system. And then of course this, yes, literally resulted in the loss of around 5 billion United States dollars annually, just for transaction costs. You know, here in Zimbabwe, when your money is in your account and you don't have cash, there are many things that are really that we then face. We have to go to the black market. They have an extra charge. We have to go to, be it a brew exchange. They have their charges and so forth. Just for me to get maybe the US dollar, or for me to get the South African rand and so forth, and it's very expensive. And this is more difficult for small to medium enterprises who really trade at a lower scale. Sometimes they do not even have a business which is worth more than 20,000, and imagine the cost may be around maybe 1,000 per transaction that they want to do and so forth. So it makes business difficult for us here in Africa. And of course, I love the fact that someone said that in Africa, our SMEs really are not really innovative. They are not innovating, and they are not even taking seriously registering themselves or complying or making efforts to comply. You know, it's very difficult for you to come across an MSME which is registered officially. With here in Zimbabwe, we use the deeds office to register. You find it difficult for you to then find an MSME which is registered. But you know, the importance of registering or being recognized by the environment that you are working in is that you can then operate officially. You can then take advantage of the AfCFTA, because I haven't seen the AfCFTA talking about unregistered MSME and trying like to say how are they going to benefit. The first thing that you have to do is to register so that you can comply with all other aspects of businesses, be it for you to then acquire the certificates, the permits, and so forth, and also to operate or to really innovate and or to do something officially which is recognized. You need to register. But most of our businesses here in Zimbabwe, around 50% of the cross-border traders are really informal. And 80% of those are women, and the remaining larger part is just youth who are working in these businesses. So it's very significant for us to take advantage and not to remain in the survival mode where we just have to evade each and everything that the government imposes on us, because most of us are unaware and we are afraid to just pay some taxes, which are sometimes even little than the monies that you are paying to just cross or dodge the border and so forth. And then, of course, there is limited access to credit, which prevents investment in research and development, as well as in new technologies. Of course, as MSMEs, some of them, they do not have collateral. Some of them, they do not have enough evidence to prove that they are able to then repay the loans that they may get or the grants that they may get from different banks and so forth. So it's difficult for them to then access the credit. And this, of course, prevents them to then invest in important aspects such as market research, which Iberi has been talking about, development, and also adopting new technologies, which are very essential for them to take advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Area or any other trade agreements that we have here in Africa. We have around 8 regional economic communities which are recognized, but over 12, which if we then get to include the ones which are not recognized at the moment by the African Union. And then, of course, if we are not innovative, most of us or most of our business, they are very comfortable with what they are doing, just buying something from China and selling it here in Zimbabwe. They don't even care to then maybe add something substantially meaningful for them to then say, this is my product, or to say then this is a made in Zimbabwe product, or to say this is a made in South Africa, this is a made in Nigeria product. So that lack of it and that laziness that we have must also be dealt with. We must also deal against that so that we really take advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Of course, we have inadequate government and private sector incentives. Of course, we have some of the trade support institutions that we have. We have the ITCs, we have the locally in Zimbabwe, we have the Zimtrade, we have the UNDPs, among others. But if we get to look at who is really getting support or these incentives to then adopt the modern technologies, you may realize that very few companies or very few businesses are benefiting from that. And most of them, sometimes you realize that are just bigger organizations or bigger business or corporates vis-a-vis the small to medium enterprises, which is the major player or the major employer or the major business that we have in Africa. If you look I think the average of MSMEs in Africa, in each and every African country is about above 80% of the business that is operating in the continent, and it employs over 90% of the population in Africa. So very significant, and it needs support for them to then participate fully in these regional trade agreements. Okay, and then we also of course, trade infrastructure. For example, be it the roads, be it even the technologies that are needed at the borders to simplify the cross-border processes, to deal against these bureaucratic pathologies, the border delays that occurs. So you realize that we lack both physical and digital infrastructure that is needed for us to then move our goods freely and easily, versus what happens when we get to buy or to get goods from other continents. You buy something from China, it can take about 3 days to get to Zimbabwe. But you buy something from Zambia, you want it to come to Zimbabwe, which are the countries which have the same border, it may take about 5 days to get there. So it's very difficult for us then to wanting to buy something from the country that is very close. And that is another challenge that we face. And then only 34% of Africans have reliable access to road networks compared to 50% in other developing countries. We are talking about the Asias and so forth. Here in Africa, only 34% of us have access to these road networks. And if you don't have access to road network, it simply means that things are going to become more expensive for you, because there are many things that you need to navigate to just get a product that you want to buy in Zambia, a product that you want to buy in South Africa, and the distance the time that you are going to take to just bring that good. Imagine you are a farmer in a rural area and you want to go and sell your perishable products in in South Africa, it simply means that it is going to be very difficult for you. It simply means that it's going to be very expensive for you to just get to South Africa. So imagine how much am I going to sell that product at the end of the day, even if I'm saying that it is wholesale. So it's food for thought. And then by 2030, we really need more infrastructure, like 2 million additional trucks, 250 aircrafts, and 10,000 wagons, and over 100 vessels. That is a projection that by 2030, that is what we need to do. But if we are looking at the investment, it's really underinvestment in transport and in logistics infrastructure. And this affects the supply chains, the beneficiation of our products and so forth as businesses. So those are some of the things that needs to be done. And these things are not going to be done by only us as businesses. These are literally the responsibilities of who? Of our governments, of our trade support partners, of these banks, the Afrexim banks, the AfDB, among other potential partners that we have in Africa. So to some extent, we do not want to blame the businesses for not really taking the AfCFTA seriously, but we also want to say that there are many people who are also sleeping on their jobs, who really need to make sure that these visions of the Cape to Cairo roads must be implemented so that we move easily, freely, and quickly from one country to another here in Africa. That will really benefit our businesses hugely. And of course, ICT and digital trade barriers that we have. We have, I think recently, we have had a conference on the AfCFTA digital protocol and so forth. And I'm beginning to really get bored of these conferences that are happening and nothing's happening on the ground. Yes, the protocol was adopted, but is there political will to then make it work? That is the question that we have. And this question has not been answered. You go to each and every conference that they have, they will be talking about, yeah, we have done this, we have adopted this, but then what after adoption? Then what? No country has yet ratified that protocol. What does that mean? It simply means that it may take many more years to really take shape for it to be implemented, because what most people do not know is that we have all these protocols that we have, right? Just like what happened on the protocol on goods, on services, on the AfCFTA agreement itself. All other protocols that you are talking about, they also need ratification of at least 22 countries. And most of them, we haven't seen any country that has ratified them. Of course, most of all you people, you are celebrating that the guided trade initiative is taking place, but I don't believe in trade that is photographed. Trade must not be photographed. Trade must be real. It must be happening behind the scenes, not to say, Zimbabwe has traded with South Africa and then you take a picture. If we do that, do you think that how many pictures should we have by now? So this is the challenge that we are having as Africa. We are taking photo bomb moments on the moments that we need to take seriously. There is really low digital literacy and infrastructural gap, which contributes to underutilization of digital trade platforms. Of course, we have several digital trade platforms. We are talking about, of course, those, most of them, of course, that we are using at the moment, they are not born in Africa, but they can be used in Africa. For example, the Alibabas, you can really trade or sell or buy something on Alibaba, and it's an African product. But then for it to then come here and then to get here in Zimbabwe, it may be very difficult as compared to buying something in China and it here. And then there is also challenges that, in most of the Asian countries, they have already started using robots. They have already started using artificial intelligence at the border, so that people do not take long at the border, so that people can just pass at the border like it's you are just getting from one country to another easily without facing any challenges. But at the moment, we haven't really taken advantage of the fourth industrial revolution that is at the end. And if we remain behind, it simply means that the penetration of digital literacy and digital facilities in Africa is going to be very low. It's very expensive, of course, for us to really even to buy data, for me to look for something online and buy it. It's very, very expensive. And of course, we have seen that we have the automated single window systems here in Zimbabwe at the Chirundu border post. We have it. And then it's also easier on the Zimbabwean side when you want to cross to South Africa because of the updates or upgrades that are happening here in my beloved country, which is very commendable. But this is something that needs to be done like in all African countries. And of course, when it comes to the ICT and digital trade, you also realize that the e-commerce platforms in Africa, number one, some of them they are too local. Some of them they are not friendly, and others are just scared to use. You find it difficult for you to just go on that platform and trust it, because of course our mindset have been built around these Alibabas and other digital platforms that are not ours. And this reduces efficiency in trade documentation and also delays transaction processes. And of course, in here in Zimbabwe, you want to get a permit. It's still being like you need to go to one person to another, from one person to another, from one person to another, for you to just get a permit to maybe transport or to transport one good from Zimbabwe to another country, or even to pass through Zimbabwe to Zambia when your product is from South Africa. And so those are some of the things that we need to deal with. And most of our government institutions haven't really adopted the new technologies, these single windows platforms, because why should I go to 10 office for me to just export one product? It's very, very, very absurd and challenging. Of course, we talked about the free movement protocol earlier, so I think really I think it's something that has been talked about hugely. And of course, the access to finance, most of the SMEs, they really find challenges to access these finances. And then moving on, I think we are also talking about the AfCFTA awareness and import dependencies. When you're talking about awareness, I was looking at this research that was done by ITC, and it was in the Francophone countries, and it was very sad to learn that only about 25% of the firms that were interviewed have read about the AfCFTA. This is have read, not necessarily mean that they understand what the AfCFTA is. It's just about hearing this word, and it's only 25% of these people who understand. That's in the Francophone Africa. If we then take like all African countries, you may realize that then this number may drop maybe to 10% or 15%, or maybe it may rise. But this is very sad, because if you are not aware of this agreement as a business, it simply means that you are not going to trade with under that agreement. And imagine, we may blame the businesses about or not knowing about this, but it is not their fault on not knowing about this to some extent, because it is really the responsibility of these trade support institutions, of these AfCFTAs, of these governments to enlighten businesses, especially the business that that these are the major players in the African economy. These big businesses, they already know what the AfCFTA is all about, and some of them may have even consultants who are helping them to understand and to give them updates. But Africa is not, at the moment, is not a continent of big firms. It is a continent of small to medium enterprises. And if we do not take lead in enlightening these small to medium enterprises about the AfCFTA, We will continue to blame them that you don't know this thing. You are supposed to be knowing this thing. You are supposed to do this and that. But it is our responsibility as people with the knowledge to let them know so that they can participate under the AfCFTA. Otherwise, this lower level of understanding, especially on these smaller firms, means that they may miss the opportunities for economic integration. And if economic integration only happens at the bigger firms, I can tell you that it is useless for Africa, because Africa is not a continent of big firms at the moment. We need to make sure that these smaller firms get to know about the AfCFTA, so that at the end of the day, when they become bigger and bigger, they will then officially it will then benefit even Africa at a larger scale. But if they do not participate on that, they will remain small to medium enterprises and remain a menace to the government, because they will continue to evade the taxes that are being imposed on them. They will continue to escape the borders, and the government will lose a lot of revenue, just like what is happening at the moment. So it is really the responsibility for us, for the AfCFTA and so forth, to raise awareness. Sometimes we hear that the country has a national implementation strategy, the National Implementation Committee, and so forth. This is the same thing in Zimbabwe, my country. It is there. They said that the National Implementation Strategy is there. You ask them, give me the document. They can't provide you with the document. You ask them, how can I meet the National Implementation Committee? You can't meet the National Implementation Committee. They say there is a AfCFTA youth desk that is at the Ministry of Youth. You go there, you don't find anyone in that office, and so forth. So this is not only happening in Zimbabwe, this is happening in everywhere else in Africa. Many youth, they really have interest in gaining understanding of the AfCFTA, but honestly, they have no platforms to get that information. And thanks, of course, to you. You have given us this platform, but this is not enough, because at the end of the day, this is only accessible to that 20 or 30%, which has the internet, who has the phones, and so forth. But the majority who are in the rural areas, who are informal cross-border traders, they are not going to get this information. So there is a lot that needs to be done at grassroots level to ensure that the businesses also take advantage of the AfCFTA. Of course, the recommendations I've spoken, most of them, but what I can just say is we need to make sure that we simplify the African Continental Free Trade Area, just like what Ibere is doing or was doing. I'm also a knowledge manager. I love simplifying information for people. I also have done that in our local languages to try and ensure that even the people who do not have an understanding on the AfCFTA can, or who do not understand English or French or any other languages that has been used, can also gain an understanding on what the AfCFTA is all about. And in Zimbabwe, of course, business support organizations such as Trade is also doing the things like Next She Exporter, which helps young women they make them compete, of course, but also trying to help them to develop their businesses so that they can be able to export their products from Zimbabwe to the next country, because the major reason why AfCFTA is there, it is there to help you export your product rather than to bring a product, because we want of course, positive trade balance when it comes to economics and so forth. So we have like the next exporter, we have the not sheet trades, but Eagle's Nest platform, which also helps both young women and men who are in small medium enterprises to then compete and then at the end of the day, most of these companies end up exporting their products from one country to another. It's very motivating fact, and we've seen a lot of companies becoming or following the regulations that needs registering their businesses and so forth, so that they can just compete in these competitions and win. So it's something that is motivating, but it needs to be done on scale. It needs to be done across Africa, so that we can help these small to medium enterprise to participate in the AfCFTA and so forth. And of course, we need to really harmonize most of our policies, be it the digital trade or digital policies, be it the what else can we really unify? I think even the communications, we also need to unify that, because when you are talking about the digital infrastructure and you want to buy something from South Africa, and it's very difficult for you or expensive for you to just call someone in South Africa, it becomes another challenge for you to then access the products from there, and so forth. We also need to raise awareness amongst the small to medium enterprises, amongst the big businesses through different platforms, not conferences that we are doing at the moment. The AfCFTA is not going to be implemented at conference level. It is going to be implemented by the real business persons, by the small to medium enterprises, by many other participants or businesses, be it bigger firms, and so forth. Of course, we also need to reduce these travel and logistical costs. We also need to ensure that we have the single air transport market. The protocol on free movement of persons must also be ratified by most of the countries, so that people can move freely in Africa and can trade freely in Africa, because you can't trade freely when the people can't, when the people really cannot move freely across the continent. Of course, we also need to deal with the digital payment systems that we have in Africa, and upgrade our physical infrastructure so that people can easily move from one country to another. This also implies also considering the fact that even the people living with disabilities want to also trade across the borders. Women also may also want to have the facilities at the borders and so forth, so that they can also trade easily. And then we must also ensure that we deal aware with the lack of political will that we have in Africa at the moment, because that is the major reason why it is not working out. The AfCFTA, I feel like it should have been working out. We should not have had the AfCFTA guided trade initiative, but we were supposed to really have the AfCFTA working across Africa, because this thing was just smuggled, and it looks like it's not working out when we are talking about the real-time facts. Because if you go to them and you ask them about the statistics, they will never give you that statistic of what is happening. And if you look at their conference, the same people whom you saw on pictures or in October 2022, when they started trading, those are the same people that are still coming and so forth. And then they have formed these kind of businesses which are trading under the AfCFTA guided trade initiatives, saying that these are the business that are going to be piloted, and most of them, they are not MSMEs, they are not women owned, and so forth, which is a challenge. And I feel like there is some kind of hypocrisy in that, because if you are saying then we want to use the GTI as a tool, let it be then for everyone, not for specific firms who are then privilege to then gain the AfCFTA SME fund, or I'm not so sure the name of the fund, but those the specific business are the ones who have the access to it, but which is very, very sad. Last but not least, I just want to thank you for the opportunity that you've given me today to present on the challenges that the businesses are facing, and I look forward to your questions and also to your perspectives on different issues that I've raised on this subject. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tanatsiwa. That was very, very informative. Please, if we have questions for him, if we have contributions, if we have concerns, please, this is the time to raise them. But there was something that you said there that that has got me thinking. So please, as a trade consultant here, please permit to correct me if I'm wrong, right? You said that there are some when it comes to the protocol for people and for goods, they have rectified that much. But when it comes to movements, rather, for services and goods, they are more positive about that. But when it comes to movement, we have not really gotten that. So as business owners, and this has to do more with the government. So as business owners, is this saying that we might not be able to set up business in these other regions based on that yet? Or how does that really translate to us? I'm trying to make it as simplified as much as possible for people here so that they will understand how that particular challenge is affecting them and how they can go around it. So for example, we had someone that came and said you were trying to have like their office in some other parts of Africa. With this kind of restriction going to affect that kind of person? And then how do they go about that so that the ideology of AfCFTA is not just removed from their hearts because they just feel, oh, it's not going to work because I have this and this and this challenges. So how does it work with them? Thank you.
Oh, okay. I think it's one thing to register a business in Nigeria for me, and it's another thing for me to then get into Nigeria. Because if I can't get into Nigeria easily, what does that mean? It may also mean that it's very difficult for me to do market research there, and also to realize, do I need to set up my business there or not? So the free movement of persons is really necessary for me, and also free movement is not only for me to then set up a business in South Africa, or for me to set up a business in Nigeria. It's also for me to access jobs and opportunities, and sometimes labor from people from that country and so forth. And then, when the labor market is, of course, Africa is a bulging youth population. And when the labor market increases, it simply means that I can also get labor, which is cheap, which is very important for my business, and so forth. But of course, my encouragement when it comes to the businesses who want to set up their businesses or companies in different African countries, it's now doable and it's very easy. For example, you want to set up a business in Zimbabwe and you are from Nigeria, you can simply do that online because there are now online platforms that are meant to do that. Even without coming to Nigeria, I'm sure that I can set up my business. I can partner with Ibere and say that we want to set up a business, and let's do it together, and so forth, without going there. So it's very possible to then do that without, of course, having to navigate these bureaucracies and the challenges that we are facing at the moment. But at the end of the day, it's all about you having interest in a certain country and having done your market research. And market research sometimes may not need you to be physically there. You can have many people who can help you. You can have the connections and the networks in different countries who can help you to say, okay, yes, we can set up this business because of this and this and this. You can also go on Africa Trade Observatory and see which goods can I sell, or can I source from this country? Do I really need to have an office there, or I just need to work with this company that is there and set up a business? So basically, that is my response to your question. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yes, that made it very easy. And the solution you preferred to was made it very easy. Thank you so much. Please, do we have questions for him as regard challenges? You've heard Ms. Ebere simplify it. There are some things that you are looking at in your business and you are like, oh, this might be a challenge for me if I want to trade under AfCFTA. This is the time to ask the questions now, because we want to implement. We don't want it to just be like, oh, you're just hearing these things. We want you to start thinking about implementation. So are there challenges that you are thinking, or from what you have heard thus far, that, oh, this might hinder me from using AfCFTA to scale my business? So this is the time to ask questions. So please, are there questions, please? I also think, again, you simplified it so well that they don't have questions. Please, if you have anything you would like to add, or the mindset people should have with dealing with challenges, because like you said, there are ways to go around these things. So maybe when you have the challenge, it's not just pull you back first. Maybe the mindset to have when coming up with this challenge, if there is something you can talk about it so that they are not discouraged. Because like Ebere also said, it will take time, and you have also rightly said, sir, it will take time before these things get perfected. So once they come up, once they encounter a challenge, what do you think they should first of all do first, so that they are not just discouraged?
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Of course, we are not there to discourage anyone who is interested in participating in the AfCFTA. But what I can tell you is the AfCFTA at the moment is not working, but there are regional economic communities which are working. We have here in Southern Africa, we have the SADC, Southern African Development Community. We have the COMESA, which unites the SADC and the East African community. Those are the major economic blocks here in SADC. And then we have, of course, SACU, which is the customs union. Of course, in the Western Africa, you also have the ECOWAS, which is also pretty doing well. I was looking at the free movement report by the AfDB, and I think it's also doing pretty fine. And when it comes to the movement of persons, despite some of the challenges that are there, but on the face value is there. So what I can just add to the business is that start from where you are. Most of you are already trading, be it informal or formally, across border. It's simply that it's possible because you're already sourcing goods in South Africa, you're already sourcing goods in Nigeria, you're already sourcing goods in there. So the AfCFTA is not there to make it worse. It's there to simplify that more and more, so that most of the goods that were being tariffed by your countries can also have tariff removal. if you look at the tariff schedules that we have at the moment, you realize that they have three categories, A, B, and C, and then category A and B seeks to really remove around 97% of the tariffs. And we have not seen that in any regional economic community across the world. So the AfCFTA is really meant for us as Africans, and we must take advantage of it before the firms or the Chinese firms, the US firms, the European Union firms come in Africa, register in Africa, and also start to trade as African firms, because that is open and they can start doing that here in Africa. But it is our opportunity to really take ownership of this agreement and start practicing with the agreements that are there at the moment, the SADCs, the ECOWAS, the ECAS, the IGADs, and so forth, so that when the AfCFTA begins to be fully implemented, we will be ready, because our goods and products will be export ready. And when we're talking about export ready, Ibere has talked about the compliances that needs to be followed. Start small. You don't need to start like in bulk to say that I want to do this once I have the 10,000 US dollars, which is needed for me to be official. Start with the first certificate. Go to the next, until you get the certificate of origin, which allows you to then trade under any trade agreement that we have. Get the permits that are needed. If you need to go to the certifying organization to certify your product, do that. And especially, I also want to urge small to medium enterprises to then say that, of course, when you are trading, you need to trade in bulk, because when Nigerians want the hand, they want them in bulk. You just can't say those 10,000 bottles that we have to Nigeria and say that you are doing business. That's not business. But it may be very difficult for one business to do that. But if we have the community of people who are involved in honey business coming together, registering as one organization, but of course, having terms and conditions to say that this is my share, this is my contribution, this is what I'm going to get, right? It may also benefiting them. They will be able to sell their products in large numbers. They will be able to sell million-dollar value products. But if you want to do just a small product that you are doing at your backyard industry, it is very difficult to do so. We must learn from countries such as China. You know, most of the products that we are getting from China, they are not from big businesses. Like, what do you think? These are small businesses. If we are to be honest, these are small businesses. Big business, of course, such as Huawei and so forth, yes, they are there and they are also dominating our markets. But most of the things that you see, the mics, which they are trying to say Nike and so forth, that is not a big business. It's a very small business, but it's doing things in bulk. And sometimes these are just communities which have partnered to say that we want to dominate this market. They do not have this, so let's do it. So that is the same thing that we need to do as young Africans, as small to medium enterprises, and so forth. Of course, waiting for the AfCFTA to be fully implemented, because I do not want to lie to people to say that you can at the moment take advantage of the AfCFTA. No, it's a lie. At the moment, take advantage of the trade agreements that are there, which are, of course, the building blocks of the AfCFTA. Some of them, they even have the 100% tariff rates. They have removed 100% of their tariffs. In SADC, I think the biggest is we have products on 100%. Some of them, the majority, are around 85 to 87%, and so forth. And it simply means that there is something that is going on, and we can take advantage of that. But my last urging is that let's formalize our businesses. Let's move away from informality, because it is not only disadvantaging me as a small business, but it is also disadvantaging the government and also the bigger firms that are there, because the reason why the taxes are very high is because we are not formal. And the government is not getting revenue, and the government wants to survive, and it will then come after you or whichever form of tax that it is going to ask you. Sometimes it may be 1% tax that you just increased on your or on your pay or on your transaction charge, and then you wonder where this is coming from. It is coming from us because we are not formal. But if you formalize, I feel like most of these things will also be reduced, and will also then take advantage of these trade agreements that we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love the way you are simplifying it. Yes, we are still working on making the agreement work perfectly. But like you rightly said, in the meantime, you can take advantage of some of the things that are currently in force and are working. And you also said something that is very, very profound. Don't try and assess AfCFTA on your own first. Try and do it with communities. It's easier that way. Yes, so ensure that you are doing it with communities. Don't try and do solo. And I think that's one thing again that African entrepreneurs are fond of doing. You just want to do everything solo, your own. You have to win together to win under AfCFTA. It's a togetherness kind of thing. So you need to look at a collective way to win together under AfCFTA. Yes, that's something you need to look in on that. But for now, go and start working on how you would have services, products that have origins in Africa. Very, very important. If you don't take anything from here, this is something you need to do, because if we look at majority of African businesses, they don't have these things. This is just even looking at products. We're even still removing services yet, but from products they don't have all these things. So thank you so much, sir. Do we have questions for him? Do we have questions? Do we have questions? Or is this something we still want to sit down and think about first? Do we have questions for him? Once again, we are saying a very, very big thank you to our sponsors. That's the Borderless Trade Network, AfCFTA Dialogues, Trade Africa Solutions Consulting, and our partner in Venture Solutions. Yes, we have a third session by Dr. Oloriboye Ajayi. For those of us that do not know her, she has been a faculty member since 2020. Right? And she's going to be taking you on Africa's approach to intercontinental trade. Now, we've said it that we are trying to introduce you to these things, right? So she could not be here today due to some schedules that she had to keep up with. But her session is going to be coming up shortly, and you have access to it in the community. She's so eager to teach you on these things. Remember, if you want to trade under AfCFTA, there is a mindset you need to have. Now you're hearing various things rather from our guests today, and then there are some things that might be going on in your mind. There's a right mindset you need to have to approach this thing. So it's very, very, very important. So yes, and another thing again I would like to announce is that you heard when Mr. Iberi was also talking about e-commerce integration. We are going to be having something like, we are going to be talking on that at our tech summit. Our tech summit is coming up next month. So you should endeavor to be part of it. Like we always do at the Association of African Startups, we are providing you with the requisite resources you need. You need to build sustainable and profitable businesses in Africa. And permit me to say this, TAS will not give you what you want, but TAS will give you what you need. What you need to build is what will always keep you here in TAS. So if we don't have questions, I'm going to say a very, very big thank you to Mr. Tanatsiwa, and then we are so grateful for your section for simplifying this. And I know that we will also work with you on this because you are a very, very big researcher on this, same as Mr. Ebere. So we're also saying a very, very, very big thank you. I want to ask our president and founder if she has something to add to the conversations we've had today.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you. I mean, it was such an enlightening session today. I love that there are Africans who are doing the work and making sure we have all the resources we need to be able to take advantage of our ongoing agreements. You heard what he said. He said the AfCFTA may not be functional in a way you can plug yourself into completely. He said, but there are regions. Plug yourself into those regions and start by getting prepared for the full implementation. But also while you're at it, start making sure your mindset is tuned to take advantage of the regional market. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope that you pick one or two things that you would implement from now and monitor your growth and progress. God bless you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being part of it. Like we said, you would have access to Dr. Olori's Boyajayi session, and has to do with the mindset. This is something you must not miss. You need to have the mindset to deal with trading in Africa. You need it. So yes, and we also look forward to you being at the Tech Summit. So with that, we say a very, very big thank you once again to our sponsors, our partners, our guest speakers, and we are saying God bless you and have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Yes.
Thank you. See you again.